In New York State, can a notary public notarize a document for a close family member? Now, the answer to this question can be found at section 182.3, Requirements for Notaries, which is part of the Notary Public License Law. Specifically, in section A, it states that all notaries public who wish to perform notarial acts in New York State must, and then subsection 5, disqualify themselves from performing notarial acts for transactions in which the notary is a party, or directly and pecuniarily interested in the transaction. Bear in mind that pecuniarily means having a financial interest in the transaction. Now, with that in mind, let's look at our four choices to determine our solution. Choice A states, yes, as long as the notary does not benefit from the transaction. Now, based on what we just read, this seems to be our solution. But let's look at the three other choices just to be sure. Choice B states, no, notarizing for family members is strictly prohibited. Well, as we just read, that's not the determining factor, whether or not somebody is a family member. What's determinative is whether or not the notary has a financial interest in the transaction. Because that's not stated here, we cannot make that assumption, and therefore choice B is not our solution. Choice C states, yes, but only for immediate family members like spouses and children. Again, as we read before, what's relevant is whether or not the notary public has a financial interest in the transaction, not whether or not it's an immediate family member. We can therefore strike out choice C as a solution. And finally, choice D states, no, unless the family member provides two forms of identification. Now, this can be a bit tricky because while the notary public does have to obtain proper identification in order to notarize, that's not the relevant factor here for the question. The question is regarding whether or not the notary public can notarize for a close family member. As we read before, as long as the notary public does not have a financial interest in the transaction, then the notary public can notarize. Therefore, we can strike out choice D as our solution. This leaves us with choice A, yes, as long as the notary does not benefit from the transaction, as our solution.